Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Prudikacharya Ashtotar the Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Prudikacharya Ashtotar the Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktavrinda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Let's see where we are. Yeah, text 6. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 28th day of October 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 3, entitled Karma Yoga. Text number 6 at the bottom of page 143. I'm going to wait till we get all our chanters in a row here. Boy, it's warmer than I thought. You can turn on that fan. It's still there in a subtle form. You can try. Just kidding. No, don't bother. No, I'm just kidding. It's not that warm. Okay, text 6, bottom of 143. Karmendriyani sangyamya yaste manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudatma mityacharaksa uchyate. Karmendriyani sangyamya yaste manasasmaran Indriyarthan vimudatma mityacharaksa uchyate. Karmendriyani sangyamya Ya aste manasa smaran indriyathan vimudhatma mityacharak sa uchyate karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasa smaran indriyathan vimudhatma mityachara sa uchyate karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasa smaran indriyathan vimudhatma mityachara sa uchyate. Karma indriyani, the 5 working sense organs. Samyamya, controlling. Yaha, anyone who. Aste, remains. Manasa, by the mind. Smaran, thinking of. Indriya arthan, sense objects. Vimudha, foolish. Atma, soul. Mitya acharaha, pretender. Saha hi uchyate, is called. Translation. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Purport. There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness but make a show of meditation, while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers, but according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order. But if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the object of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. His knowledge has no value, because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, again, putting this verse into context, Arjuna began the chapter by asking Krishna to clear up a doubt. It seemed that he was speaking contradictorily, because he was exalting the idea of the steady intelligence and Brahma Nirvana and always thinking of the Lord. But at the same time, he was telling him to fight in the battle. So it would seem, how can you practice yoga on the battlefield and you want me to engage in a battle like that? And so you was with your seemingly, what did he say? These seemingly bewildering words. Vyamashreina vavakena. Vyamashra. Equivocal. Eva. He says Eva, certainly, or like equivocal words. My intelligent bewildered, and Krishna says, I have already explained the 2 classes of men. So there's the yogis, the traditional yogis who meditate, and there's the those who are involved in varnashram and activity and so forth, and are doing all kinds of things and doing their duty. We try to realize that some are inclined to one it by empirical philosophical speculation, others by devotional service. So the devotional service is here, the Sanskrit is karma yoga. Karma yogena yoginam. And the Sankhya, Jnana Yogena Sankyanam, Sankhya is traditionally analyzing, right? Separating spirit from matter, and what is the soul, and sometimes what is the super soul, and Kapila Dev's teachings. So just doing that alone is not going to work, because we have so many thoughts of sense gratification in the mind. We need to engage the senses. This is the whole point. The senses are very closely aligned with the mind. If you're sweeping the floor in a temple, then that's one activity, and you're obviously doing it for Krishna. Plus, the curtains may be open. You can actually see the Lord there. So it's a whole different activity, even though externally it seems the same as the fellow who's sweeping the floor in the bar over here. But it's a world of different, because of the consciousness is different. And you see what I'm saying? So here Krishna says in the verse we read today that just to control the senses is not going to work if that's all you do, because inside you're going to be thinking of sense gratification. The mind is like a big vacuum cleaner. It sweeps up all the activities and desires and things that you did. It's all in there. There's a record in there. So if you just sit down and try to meditate, all that's going to bubble up. And that, we have so many examples in the Shastra. Vishwamitra, right? He was the one who meditating in the forest. And he was becoming powerful. His meditation was bearing, he was getting cities. And traditionally, Indra becomes worried that he's going to take over his job, take his position. So neither Indra nor Vishwamitra were fully realized. Indra was he was a devotee, but he was a karma mishra. He really liked that position. And he sometimes misused it, and so he suffered for that. So he sends down, who is it? Menaka, one of the dancing girls of heaven. You can imagine how beautiful they are, So he's got his eyes closed, meditating. So how did she break his meditation? Remember? Ankle bells. Those ankle bells. Have you ever heard those ankle bells? You got to watch out, the ankle bells. So he opened his eyes, and there she was, beckoned to him, and now he's got a daughter. There's a whole pastime. He didn't want to take care of the daughter. He wanted to renounce the whole thing. So, in other words, it didn't work. But a devotee who's absorbed in chanting the holy name and service can go downtown SanDiego. Forget the ankle bells. I remember, I don't think I went last time. But every New Year's Eve, we have a big, this is before COVID. I know it's COVID. Who knows what's going to happen on New Year's Eve? Probably nothing. But everybody comes down there. It's a big tourist area. So we're trying to wend our way, through the crowds and things and chanting, and the police are worried. As soon as we stop, the crowds gather and they block the sidewalk, so we have to keep moving. You have to keep moving, so we're moving. And there's this passel of, what can I say, prostitutes, basically. And there was not much dress in there, they didn't have much clothes on, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just thinking how, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, you're chanting, and it's like blocking. And it's just poor, really, your heart goes out. The poor girls, they're flaunting all this stuff, and it's just, it wasn't that cold with all the people around and everything. Anyway, but the point I'm saying, you can feel the protection. You can feel the protection of the holy name and the whole process of devotional service. We're not like Haridas Thakur in the middle of the night, but still, it works. So, but here the difference is he's saying, all right, you're controlling the senses, right? Which one would we read? 343, was it? Yeah. Mityachara. So you're controlling the karmendriyani sanyamya, the active senses you're controlling. Yaste manasasmaran indriyartan, but the mind remains thinking of the objects of the senses. And vimudha atma. This is foolish. You're not really making any progress. That alone is not going to help you. Just to control the senses by force and be thinking of the object of the senses. So this is mityachara. This is a pretender. And Prabhupada says that there's such pretenders who've come to America. There's a history of it. And that hot yoga guy, he was just a rascal. He was seducing these women and everything, and they finally brought a case against him. He ran off to Europe so he could get out of the case. It was just, I'm telling you, it was like a classic case, exactly what Prabhupada is talking about here. So that's not what we're after. So then he says, text 7, the next text that we're going to read, is the contrast. Rather than being a false pretending yogi and sitting off somewhere and then trying to exploit others on the basis of yoga. The 7 is the antidote to it. Yas chindayani manasa niyam yarabate arjuna karmendriyai karma yogam asakta sabashishyate. Now just one little note, there's so much in the Sanskrit is so involved. This word tu, which became TV here because of the sandhi, that's always a sign of but. On the other hand, however, and that's what we see here. It's never, ever, ever at the beginning of a verse. There's always either one in or, where they put it. That's one of the rules I read about. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. So the idea is exactly what Prabhupada presented. In other words, he once said, when he first started the movement, 22nd Avenue, that I've tried to arrange things so there's some service to do all the time. So at every moment there's some active service to do, and at the same time you chant Hare Krishna, remember Krishna. Because especially at the beginning, just to try to sit and chant, you won't be able, it will be very difficult at that point. Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist, purport, instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime svartagati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. Does anyone know what verse that comes from? This is from Prahlad Maharaj. There's 3 verses. He speaks to his father that work as a unit. And the second one is this: Nate Badu Svartagatimi Vishnu. That those persons who are too much absorbed in material life, he says, what is it? Mati, this bead bag has been up there for a few days. Can someone claim it or at least hang it? Can you hang that bead bag properly? So, Matir na Krishne Padatak Svatova Mito. Is that yours? Is it a bead bag? When you come to class, you'll put it up there. Okay, from now, just hang it like that. It's better to hang it, okay? We got these little hooks all over the place. Matir Krishna Padatak Sutova Mito Vipajyate Griha Vratanam. One who takes a vow to try to enjoy materialistic family life. In other words, very committed. Adanta Gobhir. Who knows what that means? Adanta Gobhir. You know what a Goswami is? One who controls the senses. Go means the senses. So Adanta Go, uncontrolled. Uncontrolled senses. Adanta Gobhir. Vishatam Tamisram, enters further and further into darkness. And then this famous line, we should all know, Punak Punash Charvita Charvananam. Glenn, you know that one yet? Chewing the chewed. Right, thank you. Again and again, chewing the chewed. So, such a person does not know that Vishnu is the Svartagati. The Svartagati, the goal of the soul. Sva, Arta. Sva here means my own, my very own soul. Arta Gati, the goal of the soul is self-interest, is Vishnu. And so what interest do we have? External interest. Therefore, Vishnu Durashaya Bahiratamanana. Durashaya means extremely difficult or impossible to ultimately attain, but still you aspire for it. Bahirata, external goals. Money, fame, this woman, that woman, whatever. So many goals come into the mind. There's always more. So, Durasha Bahirata Manina, the mind is always absorbed in these external goals. Completely forget about Vishnu in the heart and all, the real goal of the soul. And Andaya Tandaya Rupandiyamana, you're encouraged in this mistake by other blind souls who are also leading you, beginning with your parents, your teachers, your so-called spiritual leaders, your politicians. Anyone who you accept as an authority is reinforcing that mistake. It's a great world of illusion, So, Andaya Upaniyamana, and what's the result of all this? Tepi Satantram Unudamni Buddha. Everybody remains bound up tightly in this, Unudamni means the strong ropes of illusion of the modes of nature and like that. So, now, there's a third verse, which gives you the solution. Just see this dramatic scene. Here's this 5-year-old boy who's a completely pure devotee and has taken full shelter of Krishna, Lord Nrsingadev. He actually hasn't seen Nrsingadev yet, but he's taken shelter. And he's completely fearless before this monstrous demon who's conquered the whole universe, and his very name indicates what he's all about. Hiranyakashipu, which means, Alex? Yeah, gold and soft bedding, and Prabhupada said, and the bed companion. It's like money and sex. So that's what he's all about, and he's conquered the whole universe. And he's so powerful. Everyone fears him, except his delicate little 5-year-old son. And so he's preaching to them fearlessly, and he says, Naisham matistava rurukramang ring spichitjanata bhagavan Naisham matistava rurukramang spichitjanata bhagamo yadata Mahiya sambhada rajobhishekam nishkinjananam nagunita yavat. So you have this yavat and tavat. This is a wonderful pair of words in Sanskrit. Generally, yavat means, and usually it's until you do this, or sometimes as long as you don't do this, you won't get that. So the tavat is what you won't get, or what you will get as long as you do. So do this and you get that. Don't do this and you won't get that. So it begins, Naisham matis tavaruru karmangrin. Being able to place your mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. That's what it's all about. He told his father at the beginning, you won't be able to become Krishna conscious. Don't worry. Matir na Krishna. You can't place your mind, matir, on Krishna. Whether you come to assembly, or happen to wander into sadhu sangha, or you do it on your own, you won't be able to do it. Because, he's more or less telling me, you're completely committed to materialistic life. You're the best of the demons. Asuravaya. And as I mentioned, Grihapatanam and chewing the chewed again and again. You don't know, and people like you don't know, that the goal of life is Vishnu, and so you're just in the darkness of ignorance. So the solution to that is to take a bath in the lotus foot dust of the pure devotee. Nishkinchananam, one who doesn't claim anything in this world, and only claims for himself in the other world Krishna's lotus feet in his service to the Lord. So there's a wonderful play on words here. It says, Naisham, those people will not be able to achieve the goal of Krishna. Matis tavad urukramang. Mati, again, the word mati, place the mind on the lotus feet of Hari. Urukrama. Urukrama means the great actor. That's the name for Vamana. Took the steps, Krama's step. Sprishati, you can't touch him with your mind. Can't place your mind. Anarta bhagamo, because there's a great benefit to doing that, becoming Krishna conscious. All your anartas are cleansed away, which is a great arta. A great valuable thing is to have your anartas cleansed away. So, urukramang spishat anarta bhagamo yadarta. They won't be able to achieve that great valuable thing of getting rid of all the unwanted things in the heart, which is what the devotees want. As long as they do not take the bath in the lotus foot dust of the Guru. So that's the key. His father didn't like to hear that. He wasn't about to surrender to Krishna. What to speak of Krishna's devotee, his own son. So he eventually had to surrender to Nrsingadev by force. So that's back to our verse here. Better to begin. This word begin wasn't there in the original translation. On the other hand, if one sincerely tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga, even beginning karma yoga is better than being a false pretender. Karmendriya karma yogam. Engage the active senses in works of devotion, karma yogam. Asakta, without being attracted to those objects. Vishishite, he's better. Now this reminds me of that verse by Rupa Goswami describing Yukta Vairagya. This is another one for adding to your, we used to have actual index cards we'd carry around. It was very effective, You'd write down the transliteration, then in between the lines you put the synonyms, and the other side you put the translation, and this way you learn the verses. So this one is very, very important to learn. And he says, anasaktasya vishayan yataham upayunjata nirbandha krishna sambandham yuktam vairagyam uchate. It's very much related to this verse. Anasaktasya, without attachment, the vishayas, the whole thing is the vishayas, the object of the senses. What are you going to do with them? Are you going to try to enjoy them? Or this verse says, no, anasa, without attachment to them, engage them where appropriate, and in the proper way according to the Shastra, the Guru Sadhu, in the service of the Lord. Anasaktasya vishayan, Yitarham, where appropriate, upayunjita, engage. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe. In this, engage them in the service of Krishna, and that way you don't remain. You remain unbound, nirbandha, to those objects of the senses, because you're not using them for your own enjoyment. They're not objects of enjoyment for you. They're objects of by which you can please Krishna. So nirbandha, and you become bound up to Krishna, Krishna Sambandha, which is what we want. We're going to be bound up by our heart strings, in attachment and attraction to something. Either it's going to be the object of the enjoyment of this world, and the only way to do this is forget Krishna, which is what we've been doing for millions of births, or by coming into contact with this enlightening philosophy through the media of the books or the persons, the devotees, we'll use those same objects for serving Krishna, implies trying to please Krishna. And that is our perfection, because that results ultimately in complete freedom from bondage to this world and its vishayas, and total bondage to Krishna, which is what we want. You have to be bound up, you have to love something, be attracted to something. So the scientific sublimation of that material attraction back into spiritual attraction is what this is all about. And karma yoga is an integral part of bhakti. And active service, especially at the beginning. Keep doing something. That's why, Lord Chaitanya's means of meditation is so revolutionary. No sitting, get up and dance. You want to move around? You want to use those senses? Run around, jump up and down. Use the eyes, see the deities, the other devotees, the mouth, the voice, the ears, of course, But I'd like to point out, maybe you've heard this before, but there's something in, what is it? Taurya Trikena. These three, Taurya, you remember what Taurya is? It's singing, dancing, and playing musical instruments. Now just see how much Maya that produces. The whole music industry, the dancing, the clubs, the raves, the music festivals, big Maya, plenty of dancing going on, musical instruments are being played, and you learn the words and you sing along, it's a major force for the modes of nature. So Lord Chaitanya used those same things for capturing the mind and focusing it on Krishna. And it just helps. Anyone who's been on, the kirtans you can hear online, if you get to go to one of those festivals. The devotees have become so expert. I heard this one, what was it? Was it Russia? Somewhere in Eastern Europe. And so many, oh my God, you had the violin players really good, and the flute. And of course the harmonium was playing and the singers and everyone. You can go for hours with that. And of course, there's always a group that's in the corner there dancing, basically the coal and the kartals, that's all you need, when Lord Chaitanya's moving. And thousands of devotees dancing and chanting. You read about the kirtans in Jagannath Puri or Navadvip. So that's full engagement. The senses are engaged. And then when the kirtan stops, there's so many things to do and you're completely enlivened to do them. Your senses are purified. And you're Krishna conscious. So the karma yoga is a very important aspect of bhakti yoga. In fact, sometimes bhakti yoga is generally known as karma yoga. What he's using there, he uses the word generally sometimes to mean sometimes. Yes, generally means sometimes it means sometimes. Because it's not generally known as karma yoga, but it can be called karma yoga in certain aspects. All right, shall we go on? Text 8. Niyatam kuda karma tvam karma jayo yakarmanaha sharira yatra pichate napasidhye yakarmanaha. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Purport. There are many pseudo-meditators who misrepresent themselves as belonging to high parentage. And great professional men, this was actually fixed, but anyway, we'll read it then. And great professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. Lord Krishna did not want Arjuna to become a pretender. Rather, the Lord desired that Arjuna perform his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas. Arjuna was a householder and a military general, and therefore it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for a householder Kshatriya. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. So-called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and soul together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously without purification of materialistic propensities. Anyone who is in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for lording it over material nature, or in other words, for sense gratification. Such polluted propensities have to be cleared. Without doing so through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become a so-called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others. So there seems to be two things going on here, because, in the Bhagavatam, we also hear, Tyaktva swadharmam, chadanam bhajang hade bhajan apakvotapate yadi. If someone gives up his prescribed duties, Krishna said, well, you should do your prescribed duties, and that way become purified. But in this verse, by Narada Muni, he's saying to Vyasadeva, if someone gives up his duties in the Varnashram and just does bhajan of Hari, Chaktvasa Dharman Chadanam Bhajan Hare, Bhajan Apakvo Tapate Tato Yadi. So he says, but he doesn't complete the course. He falls away from the path. In other words, he's joined the Hare Krishnas, given up his job as a civil engineer or something, and he's now, or a student, or whatever he may be, and now he's trying to be a Hare Krishna. And he goes, he may go 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, but it's apakva, means not quite cooked. It's not well done, because the Shrapaja is the dog cooker. So apakva means immature. Says, Yatra kvava bodram, where is there anything inauspicious in that? Because nehabrikamanashosti pratyavayam nivejate. There's no loss or diminution. In other words, he may not do any bhajan the rest of his life, but that's money in the bank. So the next life he'll start where that was, But kratvav bhadra abuddha mushikim kim varta apto abhajatam sodharmata. Where is the benefit for someone who does his materialistic duties very nicely, but there's no bhajan? There's no relation to Hari. In other words, Varnashram, just on a material level, is not going to help us. We have to accept Daiva Varnashram. That's a big thing. There's a whole ministry of Daiva Varnashram. One of our sannyasis has been starting some ideal places. One in Indonesia, where there's a farm, and you have the families, and you have the cows, and the whole thing. As an ideal example. So that seems to be contradictory here, because here Krishna is saying, better to work, do your duty, but of course it so happens that Arjuna's duty is to exactly do what Krishna wants him to do, so it's it's bhajan. It's the best bhajan, his shooting those arrows. So that's the but it's not a contradiction, because Prabhupada will say in many places, and Arjuna is a special case here in one sense, because his duty in Varnashram is exactly what Krishna wants him to do as his bhajan. So there's that. But the point is that one may have to stay in his position in the material world, for whatever reason. They have a family and so on. But one has to add the all-important practice of hearing about Krishna. And that calls to mind another verse Prabhupada would quote just as much as this other one, Chaktvasa Dharman. Gyane priyasamadapasyanamanta eva. This is another one to add to your list. This one became famous, even more so, because it was included in Ramananda Roy's answers to Lord Chaitanya's questions about, what's the goal of life and how do you reach it? This is the classic. What's the sadhya and what is the sadhana to reach it, So he started with Varnashram. Varnashmanacharvata purushena parakpaman vishnurajate pantanan etatoshakaranam. I think it's from the Vishnu Purana. And it exalts Varnashram. Varnashmanacharvata Purushena Parakvaman. That one who stays in Varnashram and worships the Supreme Person in Varnashram, there's no other path of pleasing the Lord except doing this. So, this is serious business, no other path. Lord just said, that's good, but it's external, so go on. You know, have you ever read that chapter? I used to read it, chapter 8, Mighty Leela. So, Ramananda Roy is was it so advanced that he and Swarup Damodar, they were the main associates of Lord Chaitanya the last 18 years when he was in Jagannath Puri, relishing the highest levels of prema bhakti and separation, Radha and separation from Krishna. So Ramananda Roy, although he himself was a kayasta, he was managing, he was doing managerial work for the king there, where he was, somewhere in South India. He wasn't a Brahmin, but he was highly, highly qualified in the highest aspects of rasa, tattva. So Lord Chaitanya kept rejecting. He said, you should give up that and simply work for Krishna. He even came to the point of sarvadharma parityajya, and Lord Chaitanya said, that's external. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, that's external. And then finally he came to the point of Jnane Priyasamudapasya Manta Eva. This is a prayer by Lord Brahma, right near the beginning of his prayers, when he was bewildered. He stole the calves and boys, and then he finally said, this is really Krishna, my Lord, and so he offered these beautiful prayers, chapter 14, 10th canto. So this is another favorite verse of Prabhupada's. Jnane priyasam, give up the hard work of speculation. And, this is this and this and that. Jnane priyasam udapasya, reject that. Forget about that. Jnane priyasam udapasya namanta eva, and just surrender. Namanta eva. Jnane priyasam udapasya namanta eva, jivanti sanmukaditam babadhiya vartam sthanai stita shrutigatam. Follow the path of hearing. Hearing from whom? From your pure devotee. Jivanti sanmukaditam, from the sat, from the sun. This is the same word that we sing every morning, and we still hear some devotees. I think I told you about this one. It's not sadbi, as in sadhus, but it's sadbi, as in satsanga. The sats, the sat is short for saints. So from the mouth of the pure devotees, hear their description of your glories, and the key phrase is sthane stita. Don't do anything radical. Don't take sannyas. Stay in your position in Varnashram, but add this all-important hearing of the pure vibrations coming from the Shastra, from the mouth of the pure devotees especially. And in this way, you know what the last line is? It's the shakar. You can conquer Krishna, who is otherwise ajita. Ye praya so ajita jito. The ajita becomes jita. The unconquerable becomes conquered by this process. So how is it possible? Only by love. The example is Yashoda, Mother Yashoda. To tie someone up is to conquer them. So Krishna, obviously, he showed that he could not be conquered, right? She couldn't tie him up. She couldn't tie him up. tie, 2 inches too short, tie, 2 inches. But finally, when he saw, she was tired, and the flowers are falling from their hair, there's some big spiritual significance to that. Because each stage in this pastime, which we're coming up on Kartik now, it's initiated by the flower flowing from her hair. Believe me, I studied this when I first studied Krishna book. Well, that's interesting. She's laboring at churning the butter because her servants are busy with something else. So she's laboring. Beautiful description of the ankle belt, the wrist bangles and everything tingling. And she's beautiful. So Krishna grabs the churning rod, and it says creating a situation of love. It's there in the synonym. Sometimes there's a lot of nectars in them, word by word. You have to read them. So he wants this, of course, to get to the breast, and suck her breast. So she puts aside the churning rod, and she starts suckling him, and she's seeing him, and very good. But the milk, the special milk she was cooking, she was heating up for him, started boiling over. So she had to put him aside. He became angry, bit his lips, broke the pot, ran off, And then he got into the go down, and he saw there was these pots of yogurt hanging from the ceiling. He broke one of those, started feeding to the monkeys, So she comes back. Now what? Just see. And then he must have broken the pot. So she follows his butter-smeared footprints. Did you ever read that? That's in the commentary. Prabhupada's purport. And she sees him. She's got this stick. And he sees her. Oh my God. And so he starts running. So this is all, this is all is Vatsalya Ras, the perfect perfection of Vatsalya Ras. Because he's all powerful. But he's hidden all of that to evoke her natural motherly affection, and mood. So she runs after him, runs, and but when she stops the churning, because she's churning, the flowers fall from her hair, and then she stops the churning. She's running after him, and can't catch him. The flower falls from her hair, and she catches him. She's tying, can't tie. Krishna's realized how tired she is. She's perspiring. The flower falls from the hair, and he lets her tie her. It's like an offering of flowers, So, I don't know how we got from that. Anasakta Sibishayan. So the idea is that one can, again, back to this basic principle, how are we going to get free from our attraction to the Vishayas? It's built in. We have a material body that's been given us because we're envious of Krishna. And so it's naturally attracted to the object of the senses. The opposite sex, the food, a million different things coming at you. So what to do with that? You can't repress it. If you repress it, it'll come out eventually. And that so it's not a question of repression, it's a question of engagement. Dovetailing. This famous dovetailing. We like to eat wonderful food. Okay, we have prasadam. You can remember it's Krishna and gradually reduce the quantity. And so you want to see beautiful things. There's the deities. There's the paintings. You want to, all of the senses can be engaged in Krishna's service, and this way purified. And your vision can be purified to the point, through hearing, all the senses become purified. And so, in that way, that's right, ajita jita, then you develop love for Krishna just by that basically by the hearing process, which then is fructified in chanting and produces the constant remembrance. And so, ultimately, you can conquer Krishna. So, at this point, he said, this is very good. He doesn't say this is external. When he goes through, this is external, this is very good, but can you go further? And then he starts going through all the rasas. The Shanta Ras, Dasya Ras, Sakya Ras, Vatsalya, and he comes to the Madhurya, and this is very, very good, but if you know anything else, tell me. And so then he gets into love and separation to the highest levels, So that's the talks of Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya. But here, this is, how to work, the karma yoga, you gotta have to work, so how to work, and at the same time be Krishna conscious. That's what this is all about. So even if you just begin the process of karma yoga, karmendriya karma yoga, by linking this asakta without attachment to the object of the senses, that's better, far better than the vichachara, the pretender. All right, going on. Niyatam kudakarmatvam. Didn't we? Right? Isn't that the right one? Or I didn't do 7. Yeah, we did 7. Text 8. Niyatam kudakarmatvam. Oh no, we did that one too. We did that one. All right, text 9. Now this 9 is a famous verse. This is like one of the memorable verses from this chapter. Memorize. Put it on the card. Yagyatat karmanon yatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sangat samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. Now let me ask you a question. It's an editorial question, and you're my consultants in this regard. This first sentence, what it really means is, just think, and it becomes very clear in the rest of the translation and purport. Work has to be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Doesn't that sound right? Work has to be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu. But when you say work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work binds this material world, then what I visualize is, okay, you have a nice family of pious Vaishnavas. They live by, the fellow works as an engineer, computer engineer, and the mother raises the kids. He's got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, boy and a girl. And so every Saturday morning, they come to the Hare Krishna temple here in Pacific Beach, and they do all kinds of work for Krishna. They clean the place up. They're sweeping up there. Maybe maybe they're doing the pots in there, and in this way they're performing sacrifice for Vishnu. So work as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. So they're doing that. I do perform work as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Therefore, all my work is not binding me. But that's not the point. In other words, the other 6 days of the week, if you're doing fruitive work, that's going to bind you. You see what I'm saying? It's not that. It's just like here's another example. Deep breathing has to be performed. Otherwise, you won't get the full benefit of breathing. Right? Says, I'm good. I do. I go to the Hatha Yoga studio once a week, and we do some nice deep breathing. So deep breathing is being performed. No, the idea is you have to breathe deeply. When you breathe at all, you have to breathe deeply. Then you'll get the full benefit. You see the difference? So it's not that work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Work has to be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Whatever work you do. Otherwise, whatever work you do that is not a sacrifice of Vishnu, that will bind you. Anyway, so you see the difference? Anyway, I'm thinking of that. I'm making a change on that one. Okay. Purport. Since one has to work even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that that purpose can be fulfilled. Yajna means Lord Vishnu or sacrificial performances. All sacrificial performances are also meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin Yajna vai Vishnu. In other words, the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed yajnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. Krishna consciousness is therefore performance of yajna as it is prescribed in this verse. The Varnashram institution also aims at satisfying Lord Vishnu. Varnashram Chavada Punashena Pamakwaman Vishnu Aradyate. I just quoted that verse from the Vishnu Puran 388. Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work, now there is obviously, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world will be a cause of bondage. There it's very clear. For both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds the performer. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu, and while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. This is the great art of doing work, and in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. One should therefore act very diligently under the expert guidance of a devotee of Lord Krishna, or under the direct instruction of Lord Krishna himself, under whom Arjuna had the opportunity to work. Nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. That's kind of the sutra verse. That one you can write on your little card, remember it. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. So, what's the actual difference between karma yoga and bhakti yoga? Well, it's not that there is one is in one sense part of the other. But karma yoga traditionally means that you work, and then you give as much of the fruit to Krishna. Because your work may be not reminding you of Krishna if you're working outside, which is a big outside out there, right? So, but if you give as much of the fruit as you can to Krishna, then that's karma yoga. And you can also think, I'm making this money, I'm going to give it to Krishna, so you're reminded of Krishna. But it's not on the same level as chanting Hare Krishna. I mean, one should chant Hare Krishna and also perform, give the fruits of one's work if you were living outside. But there's a difference. And so bhakti yoga really includes the essence of karma yoga, which is that working as a sacrifice for Vishnu. But the point is that sacrifice implies something that you're attached to, but you give it to Krishna, But bhakti yoga comes to the point where you're working for Krishna, but it's not a sacrifice anymore. It's just an act of love. Is the mother performing an act of sacrifice when she suckles the baby? No. Oh, what a sacrifice, I have to time it. I don't want to give too much time. It doesn't work like that. It's pure love. So the very activities, the same activities that you're doing with an idea, I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to do it as a sacrifice for Krishna and get purified. All right, that's fine. But the purer activities, I really want to do this because it'll please Krishna. You see, it's from the point of sadhana bhakti or vaidhi bhakti, rules and regulations, matter of duty. I'm going to do it, to raga bhakti, where it's as spontaneous as what we now in our conditions they do for sense gratification, where people who have no idea about anything walk into the supermarket or the grocery store and they see a box of candy that they like, and they buy it. They say, "Oh boy, I'm contemplating that." On the way home, they can't stop themselves. They open the box while they're driving the car, right? Spontaneous. It's not a question of duty. It's not work. It's just, I want it. I'm going to enjoy it. So there's that. Of course, that binds you to this world, to suffering, but that doesn't have to be that way. We can come to the point where chanting Krishna's name, doing service to Him, sacrificing, what would normally be a sacrifice is actually a great pleasure. As Bhaktivinoda says, those troubles that I undergo in your service are the sources of great pleasure. And the troubles on one side for the body, but the heart is feeling, this is love. So that's the difference between karma yoga and real bhakti yoga. But it's a very important aspect of this idea, Yagyart Karmano Nyatra. All right, we have a couple of minutes. I'll perform a great sacrifice and chant a couple of poems for you. All right. Chaitodarpanam arjanam bhavamahadavagni nirvapanam shreyakaida vichandrika patatanam vidya vadhu jivanam anandam buddhivardhanam padipadam purnamita swadanam sarvatmasnabadam padam vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Now, these poems, which based on that, it's not meant to be an exact translation. I try to cover all the ideas in there, but there's more involved in there than that. All glories to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguish samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. That chanting is the waxing moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world. Of transcendental knowledge which will take us to life's goal, the chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, whenever Krishna's names are sung in congregation, at every step one tastes a joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention as I earnestly request, please chant Shri Krishna's holy name and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. We have time for one more. Nam namakadi bahudani jasarva shaktis tattapita niyamitak smaranena kalaha etadrushita vakripa bhagavan mamapi durdaivamid shamiha janinanuragaha. Krishna, Govinda, and Keshava too. Your names have no end, and in each of them you have invested your potencies, leaving none out. Whenever we want, we can chant them without the slightest restriction of time or of place. O Lord, who can fathom your infinite grace? But I am so wretched, devoid of all shame, that I haven't developed a taste for the name. Now this next one we should all know. Try to memorize it between now and tomorrow morning. Trinadapi sunichena, tarorapi sahishnuna, amanina manadena, kirtaneyak sadaharihi. Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami says, string it around your neck for remembrance. More humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, to think all praise belongs to others, none belongs to me. Such qualities attract the Lord to bless one with the power to chant His name incessantly until the final hour. And that's all we have time for right now. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Maybe next Monday we'll finish that verse 4. Did you ever go to YouTube?